Today is the 17th of Tammuz. It's the day that Moses came down from the mountain and he broke the tablets. So, and many other things happened. The enemies of Israel surrounded the Holy Temple on this day. Not surrounded, actually made the first breach. And so today is a fast day. As to commemorate 5 different things. I'm having trouble here with Clubhouse. Oh, okay. Seems to have its own mind. We welcome today Michael in Germany, Terence in Australia. June is also in Australia. Welcome. Julia, we have in Pennsylvania, Rena in Colorado. Who else is with? We have another Australian in Sydney, Louise. Zara in Malaysia, Elise in West Virginia, Rabbi, she's in Morocco. Clem in Brisbane. Leah is in Florida. And Chaim ben Binyamin, Yortzeit. Okay, Ms. Neshama go from strength to strength. Paula is joining us in California. Oh, it's been a while, I think, Paula. Welcome. Sandy in Michigan. Eugene. In the Philippines. Okay. Tony in Costa Rica, Mark in California, Diane in Arizona, Sherry's in Israel, Stan in London, England, Eugenia in Calgary, John in North Carolina, Cindy, Florida, Michael in Germany, Davida and Liba in New York. Who else? Nadam in Indonesia, Denise in New Jersey, Dana in forget Dana, you have to remind me. Daphne in South Carolina, Rusty in Texas. We have with us Instagrammers, Jennifer in Minnesota, Koya in Lima, Peru, Marlene in Florida, Rachel is in South Carolina, Yanta Telebenta. We have Jay and Adam, Dasheen, Marcy. Beautiful. Dan is in Washington. Okay, that's right. Thought so. I didn't have my morning coffee. It's all right. We're not addicted. It's good to have, but we're not addicted. Yeah. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. For the soul, the divine soul, that is a part of God, when it comes down into the body, as we've explained, God blows into the body, metaphorically. And to bring it into the body, he also speaks it. Let us make man. Nase Adam. Now the fact that there's a, a breath. As we explained, that breath comes from a deep part from within the individual, because blowing is a greater exertion and effort of the individual than the breath of speaking, right? So metaphorically, it just means comes from an inner place. So what we have is the soul, the way it's rooted in its source, a part of God. Then it comes into a body, it becomes into a being, and still having that innermost connection. And with this, now we can understand the meaning of the verse. Ki chelek avai amai Yaakov chevel nachalasei. It's in Hebrew. It's in Deuteronomy. The end of Moses' life, he says this about the Jewish people. For God's people is a part of God. Jacob, which is one of the ways we refer to the Jewish people, there's Israel and Jacob, is a rope of his inheritance. So what does that mean? So what it means here is a rope. You have the top of the rope and the bottom of the rope. Top of the rope, the soul the way it is, right? Here. And then there is the way the soul is in a body down here. How does it get from here to here? In this rope, so to speak, is by blowing. Now, blowing, as we know, the metaphor, this is God blowing, right? Means the following. When you blow and there's an obstruction, what happens? The breath doesn't get to where it goes, right? Right, the breath doesn't go. The word goes, but not the breath. You can hear me, but my breath doesn't reach the other side. My words do, but not the breath. And there's two aspects of speaking. There is the 5 organs that articulate speech, and the breath of speech. The breath, for the metaphor over here, is the inner dimension of God in creation. The articulation is the external part. Which I'll come back to. Well, basically, the external part of the articulation, so what I'm articulating is getting beyond the obstruction. So there's nothing that obstructs in God's creation. God says, tree, grow, tree grows. God says, sun, give light, the sun gives light. There's no obstruction, right? Now, the breath, though, there is an obstruction, but there's a problem. How can you say to God that there's an obstruction of him in creation? What does that mean? There's no place devoid of God. As the verse says in the Zohar, the verse says in Isaiah, all the world is full of my glory. As the verse says in Jeremiah, do I not fill heaven and earth? In other words, there's no place that is devoid of God. So if there's no place devoid of God, when it comes to his articulation of the word that is the source of creation, so there's no separation, there's no obstacle. You can hear me even though there's an obstacle put up. But the breath of God in creation, which is the innermost part of speech, meaning the innermost part of God influencing creation, which is the soul, there's an obstruction because my breath, right, doesn't reach beyond. So, of course, this is a metaphor for us to understand God vis-a-vis how he brings the soul from on high, where there's no obstruction, but now as he brings it down, so to speak, the bottom of the rope, meaning in the physical creation of the physical world, the soul in a physical body, in a physical world, well, that breath there can be an obstruction. What does that mean? Well, so if we look at Isaiah, it says, there's nothing that separates you from God except for one thing: sin. And sin can. Doing something against God, that can separate us from God. Because a sin opposes the will of God. And the will of God is what prompts him to create creation. As we have spent much time, this is the name of God, that tetragrammaton, the 10 divine attributes that are the source for everything in creation. Divine wisdom, Bina, the 60 emotions, Malchus, the Word of God, right? And here it all begins beyond the name of God, which is alluded to by this thorn pointing upwards, beyond divine wisdom. And what is that? Divine will. That's greater. And this alludes to that which is beyond the divine will of God. Well, God has a will that we should do this and not do that. By not doing it, or what we're supposed to, and by doing what we're not supposed to, so then what we have done is created a tear in the rope. We've severed the rope. That rope that is connecting God's name from on top, the way the soul is a part of God in its root source, right? On top, the soul in its source in the divine, it's a part of God. And then when it comes in here, that part is over here, but it comes through the breath. That's the metaphor. So now, through sin, going against the will of God, we've created that obstruction that now can sever the connection with God. With that, then we can understand how there can be excision and death at an early age when we go against the will of God. Because this rope is analogous to 613 strands that this rope is made of, that brings us a connection to the vitality of God, which is the source up here on the top. So this is made of 613 strands. If we violate one of the sins, so we weaken the rope, right? We weaken the rope. If we do something very severe, we can sever the rope, God forbid, right? And then again incur excision or death by the hands of heaven, meaning that you don't get the breath of life from God that gives us vitality. And therefore a person can pass away at an early age. Pooh! What a metaphor. Very powerful. Now, we didn't explain yet how that works when we see that in fact people do sin and they don't die at an early age. And so we do have that question we still need to answer, which we will get to. But right now, what we're explaining is the concept of the soul that is a part of God being blown into the individual in their body, that soul, that is still got a part of God in them, but because it's blown, that breath of God could have an obstruction. We could create an obstruction for that vitality that God is imbuing us with and giving us through going against the will of God. Very powerful. With this, we're setting ourselves up, or the Alter Rebbe is setting us up for how we could do tshuva, right? The point here is not about how you disconnect. Disconnect will happen unless you're righteous. We're not. So that's going to happen. The question is, how do we reconnect? And of course, we need to understand how is it that we can reconnect when the breath is being obstructed, the life force of God is being obstructed. Why are we not, God forbid, right? Don't have the chance for tshuva. So we're going to get to that. But that was chapter 5. Very powerful metaphor, which this metaphor will continue. And we'll have further elaboration of it. Davida, when we do tshuva, don't we shorten and strengthen the rope? Yeah, so I guess we're going to have some patience, because I understand, who wants to be left at this point, right? Yeah, so we're going to get there, Davida. Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. We will get there. Any other questions or comments? There will be TRC today, even though it's a fast day. What a great way to, use your fast day. Another Tanya cliffhanger. Yes, Elise. Absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Rambam coming up at 4:30 today. We're going to have TRC, so do come and join us. To be another question, when the Chas v'Shalom pass away in an early age, can that be that they just finished their mission? Yes. Let's be very, frank. Only the righteous don't sin. And a Beinoni. A Beinoni fights every moment not to sin. We are only Beinoni in training. We're not a Beinoni, let alone righteous. So we do have things that are sinful. Okay. So, yeah, it's Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Saving Time, New York time. I think it's West Virginia time, if I'm not mistaken. California is 3 hours earlier, 1:30. Cain and Abel. Yeah. Okay. How do we affect those whose lives are shortened by the hands of another? Hey. You do mitzvahs on their behalf. When you study Torah, Leah just put up that today's yort site. Let's mention it. Sorry, lost it. But Leah mentions the yort site of someone. Just put up the name again, Leah, if you don't mind. So on a yard site, or for that matter, any time that you do something for that departed soul, a mitzvah, it helps them. Especially if it's a mitzvah that they didn't get a chance to do in this world. You have intent that your mitzvah should help their soul. That's an amazing thing. Okay. Oh, Chaim ben Binyamin. Binyamin. May his neshama have an aliyah. May his yahrzeit, may the learning that we have done help his soul to go from strength to strength. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you. Chabad Zechin Kadeshim, which are kind of it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, wonderful day. And may the day of the 17th of Tammuz be transformed to a day full of light and life and greatness.